Hey everybody, it is Saturday evening and I'm down here in the fish room tinkering around with a few different odds and ends. So we're going to do a little sort of mini update, call it a Saturday night update. It's not really going to be around the world, but just catching up on what I've been doing tonight. Oddly, we haven't done anything to the Gourami tank tonight, but I did do a lot of work to it yesterday and it is now settled in just a little bit. The plants have sort of turned towards the light just a little more. All of the detritus that was swirling around in the tank has settled down a little bit. The fish have calmed down. And so I'm really happy with the way it looks. It's nice and bright and clear again. I am a little concerned about my striped Raphael. The size of it is beginning to get concerning. When it was swimming around the tank, when I was doing the work on it, you know, it was in there kind of freaking out. I had the water out. I was moving rocks around and, you know, disturbing its cave and everything else. And as a result, I got to see just how big that fish is relative to the tank. And it's getting kind of time to start thinking about rehoming it. Other than that, I'm not too concerned about the tank. I am, in fact, thinking about adding some fish to it. But before I get to that, I will say that when I scooped out the swordtails from my wife's tank, I caught apparently 4 females and 1 male. And I just went up and checked before I started shooting this video, and that is indeed the male that was in my wife's tank. There was a male and a female in there. It's what started the whole group of them. And I can't find a male in there at all. I just see the huge female. And then I see 2 smaller ones, both of which appear to be female. One already appears to be pregnant. So if that's the case, then there's going to be plenty more in that tank. And honestly, I don't really want any more, so I'm kind of happy if we got all the males out of there and that turns into a sorority tank. As far as this tank goes, if there's 1 male and 4 females in there, he can happily do his thing as long as he wants, because I've got plenty of fish in here that will keep the population under control. And it'll just stay the 4 or 5 swordtails that are in there, the neon swordtails. So I've also been enjoying watching the swordtails swim around the tank and nibble on little bits of algae here and there. I definitely think that I need to cut back on how much algae wafers I put in this tank, and that will encourage those algae-eating fish. We can even see one of my off-walks grazers right there. See how beautiful clean that rock is now that some of that stuff's been sort of killed off. He's out there already scraping it clean for me. So as long as I can keep it reasonably clean, then I think they'll stay on top of it. So what I did was I ordered some shrimp pellets because I need some sort of sinking food to get to the bottom. I've got a few bottom dwellers. I've got a loach, a red-tailed loach that hides all the time. We never see it in this tank, but it does live on the bottom and it does feed at night. And so getting food to the bottom is important. And I usually rely on the algae wafers to do that. And I think by putting so many algae wafers in there, I just sort of spoiled all of those fish, and they never had to forage for themselves. And the result was my tank started getting a little overgrown. And once it started getting a little overgrown, it snowballed. Now, I'm sure I did something to shift the balance. I still don't have any idea what I did or what changed the balance. But the way it shifted and that growth of that blackbeard algae took off the way it did, something changed in the tank to make it do that. I'm just not really sure what it was. So I've done all that, and now I am considering adding some more fish today. I almost went out and got what I'm thinking about putting in here. And what I'm thinking about putting in here is another little Tenopoma cutirostra, a little African leaf fish like I've got in my 125. I just think it's an awesome fish with a ton of personality. It would be interesting to get another fish of the same species and see how different the personality is and watch it grow up. The one I've got is probably somewhere between 5 and 6 years old now. So, who knows? I might get another 5 or 6 years out of it. I might get another 2. It's hard to say. They don't really live that long as far as I understand. I think 5 to 7 years is normally listed as their lifespan. So, it might be interesting to get another one. This is a Gourami tank, or I think of it as my Gourami tank. And while the Tenopoma is not a true Gourami, it is an anabantoid, or a labyrinth fish, and it is related to the Gouramis. And so it would be interesting to put it in here. My only concern is that it would either get aggressive as it got larger, or it would just get so large eventually that it would actually outgrow this 55. that would be years down the road, so I guess I don't have too much to worry about if I'm thinking about in those terms, but it is something to consider. That fish would get fairly large. So that's just kind of a recap and a look at my Gourami tank. I'm so happy with it. I just wanted to shoot a little video and talk about it. But what I'm really doing in here tonight is working on my garden tank area, or my waterfall tank area, whatever you want to call this area. I've already done one really major water change. I filled it back up, and now we're actually draining the tank again. And the reason being is that I've sprayed soapy water all over everything. I hosed the joint down with the soapy water tonight. Now, I will say that if you follow along and you're familiar with my process of doing this, you'll know that the last time I did it, the soapy water I used was minimally soapy. I wanted to see how little soap I could get away with and have it still be effective on the aphids. And I believe it was effective on the aphids that were treated. What I did was I sprayed everything sort of superficially. You know, I kind of got around and sprayed, you know, from the angles as much as I could this way and that way. But I didn't really get over there and physically hand turn over every single leaf like I did tonight. I mean, I really got in there literally, physically, and turned over every single one of these leaves. You can see how sort of curled and crumpled they are. That's because there's a bunch of aphids on the back side of it, feeding off of it, sucking on it like a vampire, and it's causing all that wrinkling and shriveling. And you can see it going on that one up there, and these down here are, you know, they're just being killed. They're being so chewed on. That's actually another one right here that you can barely even see anything left of it. I've got you know, they're all over this stuff. I've just got a lot of aphids in here again. It's one of those things that you've just got to stay on top of them constantly, or they will start multiplying and coming back, you know, with a vengeance. And so tonight I really sprayed everything down really, really thoroughly. Likewise with all of my philodendron over here. I actually physically picked up all these planters and turned them upside down and sprayed down onto the back side of the leaves, because the back side of these leaves, let's see if we can see one of them. Well, it's still all sort of wet and soapy, but this was just covered with aphids. A few of the leaves, I don't know exactly which ones, but some of the back sides of these leaves, which is absolutely gorgeous, by the way. If you ever see one of these outside and you actually get to see some setting sun coming through the leaf, it's like a stained glass window. Really, really beautiful plant there. Likewise with this one. So that's what we got going on with that. That's why we were doing the big water change, because I sprayed so much soapy water. Again, not a ton of soap in the water, but any soap is soap. And you know, I'm always really, really leery about getting soap in the water. Plus, the tannins in this tank build up ridiculously fast, and it turns into weak coffee. I don't even want to call it tea-stained water. It looks like weak coffee after just a few days. So even after filling it, you know, I drained it down to 3/4 of the way down and filled it back up, and you can still see how stained that water is and how tan that water is. This water is by no means clean. You know, it's all sort of cloudy because I just did a big water change on this tank too, but we'll talk about that in a second. But look how much clearer it looks than that. That looks like tea-stained water already. And again, that was after a huge water change. So now I'm going to drain it again and refill it. And after that, it should be reasonably clear, and it should be free of soap and safe, and the fish should be okay and everything else. So down here, we've got my red-clawed crab tank, although I'm beginning to not really even think about it like that anymore. I just never, ever see the crabs. I don't even know if they're still in there, to be honest with you. I sort of looked around. I didn't lift any rocks or anything, but you know, I was pouring water and banging and knocking and moving the stuff around to get to the pump and the filter over here, and I never saw hide nor hair of a crab. I haven't seen hide nor hair of a crab, and I don't know how long. I haven't really gotten down here and looked through there. We might be able to just look right in there and see two crabs staring us in the face. I don't know, but I honestly don't know if they're still in there or not. I don't think it's as easy to get out of this tank as you might think at first glance, although I do have to admit the recent additions of this makes that sort of a moot argument, because it would be extremely easy to climb out with those things sitting right there. However, they just kind of got there recently only because I've sort of given up caring. You know, if the crabs are still in there, I almost welcome them to escape. It might be exciting to find them somewhere in the basement, because I sure don't ever see them in here. So I just kind of think about this, you know, just as kind of a little tank on the floor. It's got some endlers swimming around in it, and I don't even know what I think of it as. It's just kind of a little tank that sits there on the floor. It's cool in its own right, But it's just, you know, it is what it is. But I did an actual water change on it tonight, not just topping it off like I normally do. This tank tonight, I actually got in there and I drained a bunch of water out, put a bunch of water back in. It is brackish water. I did have to mix up a batch of brackish water. I didn't have any at the ready. Not a big deal. I don't recommend mixing it, you know, as you do it. I didn't mix it in the tank, but I did mix it in a container and then brought it in and did an immediate water change. I didn't really give it time to, you know, fully incorporate chemically. I always like to try to give it 24 hours if I can, but again, not a big deal. I've done it many times in the past, and I'm sure I'll do it many times in the future. They call it instant ocean for a reason. You're supposedly be able to just mix it instantly, and then you've got your marine water, or in this case, brackish water. So we're going to let this tank finish draining just a little more, and then I'm going to top it back off, and then we're going to call that good on this tank. I also did filter change in here, which I always have to do. I do the filter change probably just about every other day anyway because it clogs up so fast. And last, let me go ahead and turn this light back off. Last, I'll have a little bit of a chat about my 125 here. I haven't paid too much attention since I've added my new Loach. I did take the clown loach that was in my Gourami tank and I removed it and put it in this tank because it too was getting pretty large and it was in there kind of by itself. There are some other loaches in there, but none other of its species, and the only other one that was compatible with its size is that red tail loach, and that is not exactly a gregarious loach or a very friendly loach. And so that's just kind of there doing its thing. So here we go. I knew we'd see them sooner or later. So there's two. The other one's over there. So at least we know all three of them are still in there. And what we're probably going to be seeing over the next few days as they dart and chase each other around is sort of a reshuffling of the pecking order and sort of reestablishing whose territories is whose and so on and so forth. Because they are very gregarious animals. They do get along in groups. They do prefer to be in groups. And once you get a group of them together, you will usually see them palling around together all the time. Although they're not really a schooling type fish. They won't, you know, they don't stay together all the time. As you can see now, we've got these two over here that are interacting. And then we've got this one over here who's just chilling out underneath of the power head, which is where they actually like to hang out quite a lot. They'll either lay right against the power head physically. They'll let it suck them against it. And then I guess the suction just sort of holds them there and they can safely take a nap. Or they will lay on top of it or down on the gravel underneath of it like they're doing now. So we got that one over there. We got these two down here doing their thing. And I'm pretty sure this is one of the new ones. This one here that's got the sort of pale splotches on its dorsal area, I believe is the new one. Or, well, it's new to this tank. Obviously, it's not new to me. So it doesn't seem like it's being the one being bullied necessarily. It's doing its share of chasing as much as it's being chased. So I'm not concerned about it being, you know, harassed or bullied. In fact, the reason I put it in this tank was because there's more of its own kind in here, and I thought it would be better off being with other loaches of its own kind rather than by itself. So again, not concerned about any kind of, you know, aggression or pecking order, like mixing, you know, certain kinds of fish. You don't want to put multiple groups of them in a tank. You know, red-tailed sharks or rainbow sharks, you know, you don't want to have a group of them in a tank because it'll be just fighting constantly. They're very territorial fish, whereas these loaches are very gregarious. They like to be in groups. So I'm going to call that good. This tank's about drained down enough that I'm going to go ahead and start filling it back up, and we're going to call that it for the evening. I have not gotten to any of my other tanks, haven't tinkered around with anything else today, so maybe that'll be for tomorrow. We'll get to my black ghost knifefish tank and my purple spotted gudgeon tank, because both of them are in desperate need of work as well. So make sure you're subscribed, that way you won't miss anything. Maybe we'll do a little Sunday evening update as well, and we'll catch up on everything I've been doing tomorrow. Provided, of course, I have the motivation to get in here and do a bunch of stuff tomorrow. So we'll see. Again, make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss any of that or anything else. And then don't forget, this one here is my 125-gallon tank. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. And I will see you real soon on the next one.